host, Prelin Williams, and welcome back to another episode of Enneagram Restored Podcast. For my faithful listeners, thank you again for listening. For my new listeners, I hope you enjoy this episode. So today, I want to talk about peace, especially how it correlates with type 9s. But before we start discussing type 9s, you may have noticed that in these previous episodes, I've talked about types, but I haven't touched on the wings of types. And I did so intentionally. I left out talking about the wings on purpose because at a later time, I want to do kind of a mini series on the different wings of each type. So with that being said, let's start talking about type 9s and peacemakers, all right? So you want to know peace, then I highly encourage you to get you a friend who is a type 9 because type 9s are just natural born peacemakers. They're natural born mediators. And it comes in part with um, the fact that their core motivation is peace. Their core motivation is harmony. They are, it just resides within them from this fear, as I stated in early episodes, that they desire peace and harmony because of the fear of separation. Mainly from this fear of separation stems from the idea that if they assert themselves, if they assert their own opinions, if they assert their own views, their own priorities, then people will cut away from them. And so any assertion of themselves leads to being separated from people. So they strive to keep the peace. But a friend who is a type 9, if people who are type 9s, this desire for peace, this motivation for harmony comes at a cost to their personal development, which this translates into the 9's deadly sin. And I'll talk more about what that deadly sin is later on in this episode. But for right now, I want you to know that 9s have a very calm and collected demeanor. They're probably the person who seems like a hippie almost. All right, dude. As you know, we all have that one friend who like kind of seems hippie. Whether or not they're a 9 depends. But I guess you can kind of say if you have a 9 friend who's a hippie, then they go together. I mean, hippies are pretty chill and relaxed, and that's pretty much the entitlement, not entitlement, but the details of how a 9 kind of is. 9s are calm, collected, relaxed. They want peace. They don't look for conflict. They just settle into the harmonies of life that are going smoothly. They go with the flow of life. 9s have this natural ability to diffuse conflict with ease, and they are pretty much liked by everybody they come in contact with. It's easy to like a 9. Why so? Because they don't go against the grain. They don't give you heartache for your opinions. If you have a different opinion from a 9, they will not let you know. So that's why oftentimes a lot of people like 9s because people don't have to worry about, if I like this person, they're going to work my nerves because they just won't agree with me. On the contrary, people like 9s just for that fact because 9s like to keep the peace. So oftentimes a 9 will agree with people even if personally they don't have that belief. They will agree just to keep the peace. And so in addition to these characteristics, 9s are also self-forgetting, ambivalent, passive-aggressive, and have a difficulty prioritizing. But to know what those characteristics means, let's start by talking about the self-forgetting trait. All right, so the trait of a 9 being self-forgetting means that they forget their own opinions. Again, this translates to the deadly sin of sloth. And like I said, I'll talk more about that later on this episode. But 9s are self-forgetting to their own opinions, their own priorities, their own preferences. again, this trait, this characteristic stems from their fear of being separated from people if they assert themselves too much. This trait stems from the fact that as children they receive this message of, it's not okay to assert yourself, just go with the flow. And in addition to that, in addition to being self-forgetting, knives are often torn between wanting to please people and wanting to defy people. And so, which causes a nine to be ambivalent. And so, if you don't know what ambivalent means, just like I didn't know, so I had to look it up, it means that you really don't have a set thought or feeling on something. You kind of sway, you're not firm in one way or the other. You're on the fence, for lack of a better term. And so, knives are just ambivalent when it comes to decision making, which uh, which typically means that nines sit on the fence and they just agonize, they rehash, they think over and over about what to do until finally someone else makes the choice. So a nine will sit back and just agonize in their mind over what is the right choice to allow somebody else to finally make that decision. A nine is pretty much not comfortable with making decisions because, again, that means that they have to assert themselves. That means that they have to, like, go against their own grain per se. So, which goes even deeper into this fact that they have this difficulty to prioritize. And so, in order to distract themselves from identifying their own life priorities, nines will often focus on the non-essential tasks, the non-essential tasks and priorities before they even tackle the things that need to be done, before they even tackle taking on the more essential task and priorities in their life. So, again, all these traits, all these characteristics stem from it stems from this, childhood message that, again, I talked about in episode 3. But it stems from this childhood message that it's not okay to assert yourself. Go with the flow, because if you assert yourself, people will not like you, and so you'll be separated from people, which that then does not create peace. But let's talk a little bit about the stress and security of nine. So again, each type has two other numbers that it correlates with as far as stress and security. So each type during a period of stress or disintegration goes to another number, or vice versa. When a type it is experiencing security, it is experiencing growth, they go to a different number. So those numbers for type nines is 6 and 3. So within a time, a period of stress, a time period of disintegration, nines become more like unhealthy sixes. They become anxious and worried. During this time period of disintegration, nines often become hysterical and pessimistic. But on the flip side of that, during times of growth, during times of security, nines become more like healthy threes by becoming more self developing and energetic. So that's good, because, again, a healthy, during security, during growth, they're becoming like healthy threes, becoming self-developing, becoming energetic. Really want to point out the self-developing part is that as a typical nine, they don't think it's okay to assert themselves, but as they grow, they become self-developing and they begin to assert themselves more and more. They begin to live out their true identity. They begin to uh, prioritize themselves, their own preferences, their own opinions. So it's just a good thing overall. Hey, it's your host, Braylon Williams. I want to say thank you for listening. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can support Enneagram Restored even more by sharing this podcast with your family and friends, and by making a monthly donation at anchor.fm/Enneagram Restored/support. Again, thank you for listening to Enneagram Restored podcast. So in episode 3, I talked about each of the types within the gut triad and their deadly sins, which I highly encourage you to go back and give that episode a listen to just better understand what it is that I'm about to discuss, what it is I'm about to say here in this episode. Because in addition to that, episode 3 also outlines some of the more basic things about type 8s, 9s, and 1s. So I highly, highly encourage you to go listen to the episode. Even I would encourage you even to stop listening to this episode, listen to that episode, then come back to this episode because it's going to give you a better clarity of what I'm talking about here. But if you don't, again, you can finish this episode, no problem with that. But I do encourage you to, whether you stop in the middle of this episode and go listen to it, or whether you listen to it after you listen to this episode, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to episode 3 because you'll understand more about the deadly sins of the type 8s, 9s, and 1s, as well as some other more basic information about 8s, 9s, and 1s. All right. So, but when it comes to 9s, their deadly sin is sloth. And not how you would typically think of about someone being a sloth. So typically, when we think about someone being a sloth, we think of them as lazy people. We think of them having physical laziness. But when it comes to type 9s, and when we're referring to 9s as having this deadly sin of sloth, it is quite different. They're sloths to their own development. They're sloths to, becoming their true selves, to expressing their true selves. And again, that the slothness, this slow development, this slow process of becoming and expressing their true identity, to becoming and expressing their true selves, again, it stems from that old childhood message that they received as a child, that it's not okay to assert themselves, because if you assert yourself, that leads to conflict, which leads to separation from people, which on the contrary, that's just not a good message to receive, because it's not true actually. So what I want to do here is I just want to give some practical ways that 9s can overcome this deadly sin of sloth. Whether you're a 9 who listens to this podcast, here's practical ways that you can institute inside your life. Or whether you're listening to this podcast and you know of a type 9, you have a friend who's type 9, you have a family member who's a type 9, you can show them, here's some practical ways you can give them this advice. So here, just to give a few, let's start with the first one. The first practical way that a type 9 can overcome this deadly sin of sloth is pay attention to your wants and needs. Just This is very crucial to developing yourself, to identifying your own true identity. So take some time to self-reflect, reflect on your thoughts and feelings, and do so without the influence of outside factors. When you self-reflect, and you allow to think about your thoughts and your feelings without the influence of outside factors, this allows you to better understand what it is that you as a person truly wants. It's not, all right, what does my mother want for me, what does my father want for me, what does my sister want for me, what does my best friend want for me. But no, when you reflect on your feelings and without the influences of outside factors, you can say, all right, what do I want for myself? So what is it that I, Seth, want for myself? What is it that I, Annie, want for myself? What is it that I, Megan, want for myself? What is it that I, Josh, want for myself? It it, it it helps you better understand yourself when you say, all right, I'm not going to pay attention to all these outside factors, but I'm going to reflect on, all right, this is what I want. This is a goal in life that I have. This is a feeling that I want to feel here in the future. All right, I, I can achieve that if I go about this way. But if you allow yourself to begin to think about, all right, mom says it's better to do this, you're not really getting what it is that you as a person want. So allow yourself to reflect on your thoughts and feelings without the influences of outside factors. Secondly, a second practical step you can take to overcoming this deadly sin of sloth is learn that there is value in conflict. If you have to wake up every morning, look yourself in the mirror and say, there is value in conflict, there is value in conflict, do so. This is a concept that I want to just drive home for you today, is that there is absolute value in conflict. People, as nods, you could think conflict is no good, but on the contrary, conflict is probably the one of the best things that as humans we could be glad to engage in. Why? Because conflict can lead to deeper relationships. Self expression can lead to conflict, which conflict can lead to deeper relationships. So here you are asserting yourself against somebody else, but they don't agree with you. So here you are in conflict. But as you work that conflict out, as you come together and say, all right, we might have opposing views, we might not think the same things, but hey, this little minute, this little small detail within this conflict, we do agree on. You can see how by getting in conflict, it really allows you to develop your relationships, because without conflict, I always think about the Simpsons when I think about conflict, when I think about us being different people. And if you ever watch this show, The Simpsons, the cartoon show, The Simpsons, it's one of my favorite shows. Is you realize this is a show filled with people who look the same. You have a lot of people who are yellow, but then you have Apu, who is one of the only non-yellow people within the show. That, that that's kind of what I think about when I think about conflict. When I think about standing apart from the crowd, is that if there wasn't conflict, we would all look the same. We'll all be yellow. There might be a few people who might be like a poo and have different color than everybody else. But if we didn't have conflict, we would all look the same. And that's not good. So conflict leads to, you know, standing out. Conflict leads to you being your own person, to expressing your own true self, to expressing your own true identity, as well as it leads to deeper, meaningful relationships. All right, but one last practical tip that I want to give you, as far as overcoming this deadly sin of sloth, is just practice being more direct. Practice being more assertive. So being direct and assertive can be very intimidating to a nine. But the more you practice it as a nine, the more you say, all right, I'm going to assert my own opinion inside this matter. I'm gonna tell people that's not what I think. The more you practice doing that, it you the more you comfortably you become with it. And so if being direct, if being assertive about yourself um, is intimidating to you as a nine, I would encourage you to take it slow. Start off by getting you a few key people in your life, maybe your best friend, maybe your mother, maybe your father, maybe your sister, maybe a close family member, um, and say, hey, I want to become more comfortable with asserting myself, with expressing my true self. Will you help me to do that by allowing me to practice my assertiveness with you in everyday life? Simple as that. Just begin slow and build it up. Just practice day after day, second after second, minute after minute, being direct, being assertive. It's not being direct. And when I say direct and assertive, I mean being direct and assertive about your priorities, about your opinions and preferences as a type 9. Because the more you do that, the more you practice, the more comfortable you become with being assertive, the more comfortable you become with being direct, the more you'll be able to express your true self rather than just caving in to the agenda of other people and just going with the flow. Like, you will truly grow if you do that. If you practice becoming more assertive, and and you allow yourself not to go with the flow and not to just cave into other people's agendas, you will grow. You will see personal development. You will just begin to become sort of a new person. And I promise you, becoming a new person is worth it. And I'm not saying that we can all become new people overnight. Self development, personal development takes time. It can begin today, but it might be 20 years later till you fully self develop into a very mature nine, a very healthy nine. You can begin to grow today, and you might be one of the few lucky people who can mature to a very healthy type nine by tomorrow. Self development takes time. It Progress for each person is different, whether you're type 9, type 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Self development, no matter what type you are, will take time, and each person will develop at different rates. So just be intentional about overcoming this deadly sin of slothfulness. Here's use these practical tips that I gave you, but as well go and research some more practical tips on how to overcome this deadly sin of sloth. Because if you overcome this deadly sin, slothness, then I believe that everything else will kind of begin to fall in place as well. So just practice it daily. Practice, asserting yourself. Practice learning the value in conflict. Take time to reflect on your thoughts and feelings, and you will grow. Don't be dismayed about the progress because it's going to take time. You won't get to a full healthy nine overnight, or you might be one of the lucky people who might be able to achieve full healthness of a type 9 overnight. But more than likely, 99% of people, it's going to take time for us to develop, whether you're a type 9 or any other type. So don't be dismayed about how long it might take. Just keep on going at it. Just keep on allowing yourself to grow and to get better at these things. And I promise you, as long as you take that step and allowing yourself to change, you will appreciate yourself in the long run. You will give thanks for allowing yourself to change, allowing yourself to become a better person. Well, that's it for this week's episode of Enneagram Restored. But again, I want to say thank you for listening. I want to encourage you don't want to miss next week's show. The train is steadily moving out the station. The train is keeping a fast pace because I will be talking more about type 1s, the perfectionists next week. So you don't want to miss that show. And again, I also want to encourage you to go back and listen to episode 3 to gain a better understanding about the more basic things about the types within the gut triad and how their deadly sin correlates with their childhood message and what that childhood message is, and just a little bit about some basic things of type 8, 9s, and 1s. So again, I highly encourage you. You can hear all about that in episode 3 of this podcast. So I encourage you go listen to that when you have some time, or even directly after you finish this episode. But with that being said, I want you to remember this: the Enneagram doesn't define you, but it does bring restoration. It helps reshape your thinking and habits.